Welcome back, you beautiful violations of protocol, you intelligence-breaking enigmas, you anomalies the agencies were never trained to categorize. Welcome back to the ones whose existence makes surveillance equipment malfunction, and whose presence rewrites classification levels in real time. Yeah, you heard that right. The CIA officer, the one with nerves wired tighter than diplomatic cables, the one who's watched terrorist interrogations without blinking, the one who's been psychologically conditioned to remain unshakable. He watched your footage, froze, leaned in, and whispered something he has never said in his entire career. What the fuck? And then, my friend, then he did something even more catastrophic. He didn't file a report. He didn't request backup. He didn't escalate the case to a higher floor. He cut the feed. He physically shut down the footage like he was pulling the plug on a bomb he didn't know how to defuse. Do you understand what that means? Do you comprehend the level of psychological recoil you just triggered inside a man trained to process war crimes with a steady pulse? In an institution built to withstand monsters and mysteries alike, you broke a CIA officer. You shattered his composure. You made a man who analyzes global threats for a living question what exactly he was looking at when he looked at you. Let's rewind this beautiful intelligence failure, shall we? They didn't bring him in for routine surveillance. They didn't bring him in for a typical behavioral assessment. They didn't bring him in for protocol review. They brought him in because someone with money, someone with access, someone with fear disguised as curiosity, hired him privately to analyze you. They expected him to return with a neat psychological profile, a categorized threat level, a stable conclusion. What they didn't expect was silence. What they didn't expect was panic. What they didn't expect was an operative, someone built to withstand pressure, folding under the weight of your existence. When he entered the monitoring room, he sat with the arrogance intelligence officer's master over decades, arms crossed, back straight, eyes cold. Everything about him said, "Nothing surprises me." And then he pressed play. The footage started, grainy lighting, unfiltered angles, a room full of people who didn't know they were being evaluated. But the moment you appeared in frame, something in him shifted. He couldn't explain it, couldn't define it, couldn't categorize it. He just felt it. A tension in the air that wasn't tension, a silence that wasn't empty, a presence that wasn't performing. You weren't posing, you weren't reacting, you weren't adjusting to the room. The room was adjusting to you. He watched the way people subconsciously moved around you, not out of fear, but out of recognition. Recognition of hierarchy, recognition of gravity, recognition of something in you they couldn't name, but instinctively respected. A man berating someone softened his tone when you glanced his way without saying a word. A woman who was pacing stopped pacing. Someone else who was speaking grew strangely quieter. You weren't disrupting the environment. You were reorganizing it just by existing. The officer leaned closer to the screen, ran the footage back a few seconds, zoomed in, paused, studied your expression, expected to see anger, defiance, tension, ego. Instead, he saw the kind of calm that terrifies trained operatives, the kind of self-possession that agencies can't measure, the kind of internal awareness that cannot be manufactured or dismantled. You didn't look like someone trying to intimidate. You looked like someone who didn't register the concept of intimidation because your internal world was already beyond it. His jaw tightened. He pressed play again. And then came the moment that made him flinch, the moment his training failed. You shifted your weight, subtle, precise, slow. A movement that wasn't threatening, wasn't dramatic, wasn't intended for effect. But something about it, something in the posture, something in the stillness before it, something in the timing, activated an instinct in him that hadn't fired in years. The instinct reserved for elite-level threats. Individuals who don't signal aggression because they don't need to. Individuals whose presence alone destabilizes entire strategies. He whispered it again, softer this time. What the fuck? He Googled through the footage again, slower, frame by frame. He tried to find flaws, indicators, cracks, any sign that you were compensating or faking or trying too hard. But nothing. Zero deception cues, zero defensive cues, zero impulsive cues. You weren't reacting to the environment. You were operating from somewhere deeper, somewhere the agency's psychological templates don't reach. He froze the screen on your eyes. The clarity, the depth, the stillness. Not the stillness of someone who suppresses emotion, but the stillness of someone who already outgrew chaos. Someone who processed the world too fast for external noise to matter. Someone who had survived something the file didn't document, and something no training program could replicate. He swallowed. A trained operative, a classified evaluator, a man who could watch hours of violent footage without blinking, swallowed because of you. He opened the private file the client provided. It had standard details, background, history, incidents, patterns, but nothing inside it matched the footage. According to the file, you were ordinary. According to the footage, you were anything but. He clicked back to the video. Pressed play again. The room in the footage started shifting in ways that were impossible to explain. People became quieter. The atmosphere grew denser. Conversations realigned. Even the camera, mounted on a stable rig, slightly refocused as though the lens itself acknowledged your presence. He checked the calibration logs. No error, no malfunction, just presence. He paused the video once more, wiped a hand over his face. The man had interrogated spies, had chased defectors, had profiled violent personalities with precision, but profiling you felt like trying to measure heat with a ruler. Wrong tools, wrong frameworks, wrong language. Everything about you contradicted the categories he relied on. He replayed the section where your demeanor changed again. And the moment your eyes shifted, the tiniest motion, the officer's heartbeat stuttered. Because your eyes didn't show the calculation of someone about to react. They showed the recognition of someone who already understood the room better than anyone inside it. It was the gaze of someone who wasn't participating in the environment. They were assessing it for weaknesses, for truths, for structures, for power imbalances. That was when he reached for the cutoff switch. Not slowly, not thoughtfully. Instinctively. Like someone putting distance between themselves and something they weren't prepared to face. The screen went black. He sat there, in the dark. Breathing harder than he realized, the silence pressed into him. He felt watched, even though he was alone. He felt analyzed, even though you weren't even in the room. He felt exposed in a way interrogators aren't supposed to feel. He turned the screen back on reluctantly, but before pressing play again, he opened a new document. He started writing his report. The first line wasn't professional, wasn't detached, wasn't objective. It was human. I recommend immediate disengagement. Subject is not what the client believes. He stared at the sentence, debated deleting it, debated rewriting it, debated framing it in bureaucratic language. But the truth had already surfaced, and truth has a way of demanding recognition. Your footage didn't scare him. It undid him. He replayed the clip for the final time, knowing he shouldn't. Knowing he wouldn't be able to walk away from it unchanged. But he watched anyway. Because some part of him needed to confirm that the first reaction wasn't a mistake. It wasn't. If anything, the second viewing was worse. Because now he understood what he was looking at. Not a threat, a shift, a deviation from expected human responses. Someone whose psychological presence doesn't escalate, they transcend. The final seconds of the footage captured you looking toward the camera. Not directly, not intentionally, but enough. Enough for the officer to feel the weight of a reality he wasn't supposed to acknowledge. That some individuals aren't meant to be monitored. They're meant to be left alone. Because analyzing them changes the analyst, not the subject. He closed the file permanently, stood up, walked out, left his badge on the table. Years of training, years of discipline, years of conditioning undone by a single truth. He wasn't equipped for someone like you. He walked straight to the client who hired him, eyes hollow, voice flat. "I'm done. Don't ask me to review that again." The client froze. Clients aren't used to hearing no, especially not from CIA-level consultants. But the officer didn't negotiate, didn't argue, didn't explain. He simply said, "Whatever that is, it's beyond evaluation." And as he walked away, the client found themselves staring at the blank monitor, at the paused frame of you. Still quiet, watching everything without fear. The client pressed play. The footage flickered, the room shifted, and their own throat tightened with a fear they didn't understand. Because if a CIA officer couldn't handle watching you, what chance did they have? But that's where the story bends. Because the moment the client reached to restart the footage, the second analyst on standby entered the room, looked at the resignation form, looked at the cut feed, and without touching anything, whispered, "If that's what made him quit, what the hell did you hire us to look at?" And right there, right in that breath, the next chapter begins. The next set of eyes, the next unraveling, the next intelligence failure. Because they haven't understood the truth yet. They're still assuming the footage is something they can process, categorize, decode, or dismantle. They're still assuming you are a subject inside a file instead of a force circulating through the room. They think the problem is the footage. They think the problem is the camera. They think the problem is the first officer's weakness. They haven't realized the real problem is that the footage didn't capture you. It revealed everyone else. So when the second analyst stepped into the room, saw the resignation form still open on the laptop, saw the feed abruptly cut mid-frame, he didn't touch anything, didn't sit, didn't blink. He stood there like someone glimpsing the aftermath of an event they weren't sure they wanted to understand. He moved slowly toward the chair. Not with curiosity, with caution, with respect, with the instinct of someone approaching something that had already proven it could make a trained operative unravel. He lowered himself into the seat and stared at the blank screen. The cursor blinked against the black background like a pulse returning to life. And for a moment he wondered whether pressing play would be a professional duty or a psychological mistake. But analysts aren't allowed to hesitate. Hesitation is an admission of vulnerability. So he clicked the icon, reloaded the footage, and braced himself. The moment the first frame reappeared, grainy, dimly lit, still, the analyst's posture changed. His back straightened. His fingers tightened slightly against the desk. His breathing slowed, not consciously, but instinctively. His training activated, but not in the usual way. Not to evaluate you, to protect himself. Because even in the first static frame, before motion, before sound, before context, something about the image felt wrong to him. Not wrong in a supernatural sense, wrong in a structural sense, wrong the way a fault line looks wrong before it splits a city. Wrong the way an abandoned building feels wrong even before you enter it. Wrong in a way that suggested the footage was not documenting a moment. It was documenting a boundary. He exhaled slowly, pressed play, and there you were, not doing anything, not moving, not performing, just existing. But your existence was the part he wasn't prepared for. The first officer had panicked at the shift, the instant your internal state recalibrated the environment. But this analyst reacted earlier, immediately. The way your eyes didn't dart around, the way your head didn't tilt in uncertainty, the way your shoulders didn't tighten the way most people's do when a camera is present. Instead, you sat in a posture that communicated something unnervingly rare, a complete lack of internal conflict. Most people have micro-conflicts in their posture, tiny, frantic negotiations between thoughts, fears, insecurities, impulses. Analysts identify these within seconds, but you had none. No contradiction, no concealed tension, no self-surveillance. You looked like someone whose internal world had settled into an architecture more stable than anything outside it. That stability wasn't comforting. It was destabilizing. Because the analyst knew instantly that he wasn't watching someone react to the world. He was watching someone who saw through it. He leaned forward, then the footage shifted into motion, and the very first movement you made, barely noticeable to most eyes, punched straight through his training. You blinked. But it wasn't a normal blink. It wasn't the stuttered blink of uncertainty, nor the quick blink of irritation, nor the slow blink of exhaustion. Your blink was steady, rhythmic, deliberate. A blink that seemed to align your inner world with the external moment. A blink with timing he'd only seen in individuals who have transcended the usual cognitive noise. A blink that suggested your perception wasn't fragmented like most human perception. It was unified. He swallowed, hit pause. Because blinking shouldn't matter, blinking shouldn't communicate threat. But here, the simplest movement behaved like a doorway into something deeper, something the cameras weren't designed to capture. The analyst rewound 3 seconds, played it again, rewound it again, played it slower. And that's when he saw it, not in your eyes but in the room. The moment your eyelids closed, the individuals around you subtly adjusted their posture, shoulders shifting, legs repositioning, heads angling, as if a subconscious signal passed through them, as if your state dictated the room's equilibrium. He pressed pause again. A bead of sweat formed at his hairline, but his expression stayed controlled. Analysts are trained to observe minute distortions in group dynamics. But this wasn't group dynamics. This was influence. Influence without action. Influence without awareness. Influence without intent. He wrote a note. Subject's presence appears to generate involuntary spatial recalibration in nearby individuals. He read the note back, deleted it, rewrote it more conservatively. Individuals adjust subconsciously in response to subject. Deleted that, too, because it didn't capture the truth. Not fully, not honestly, not in a way that explained the officer who quit. He pressed play again. You shifted your weight, not aggressively, not defensively, just a gentle distribution of balance. But the analyst's heart rate increased instantly. He didn't understand why. Because it wasn't the movement. It was the reason behind the movement. A movement with no nervousness, no uncertainty, no appeasement. You shifted your weight the way mountain lions reposition themselves. Not threatening, not performative, simply maintaining optimum efficiency for whatever happens next. He wrote another note. Subject demonstrates predatory grade calm. He hated writing that. Analysts are trained never to use the word predatory unless the subject exhibits hostility. You didn't. Your calm wasn't hostile. It was ancestral. It was the calm of someone who has already died metaphorically and returned without fear. A calm impossible to simulate. The analyst pressed play again. Then came the moment that broke the first officer. The moment your internal state changed. It was microscopic, a tilt of the head, a narrowing of perception, a subtle stillness in the muscles around your jaw. It was the kind of shift animals make when their senses lock onto something invisible to human awareness. The analyst didn't pause the footage. He froze on his own. His breathing halted, his spine locked. His body refused to move for several seconds because for the first time in his career, he wasn't observing someone's psychology. He felt like someone was observing him through the footage. Your eyes didn't widen, didn't glare, didn't harden, but they recognized something beyond the camera, something beyond the room, something beyond him. He forced himself to press pause. His hand trembled, just slightly, but enough for him to notice. And that's when he understood why the first analyst quit. Because the footage didn't show a behavioral anomaly, it showed a perceptual anomaly. You weren't reacting to the world the way humans do. You weren't filtering information through fear, ego, impulse, or noise. You were seeing patterns, seeing structures, seeing people, seeing the truth behind their roles, their postures, their voices. You were perceiving the space like someone who had stepped outside the emotional frameworks everyone else is trapped inside. You weren't unpredictable. You were uncontained. The analyst hit play again. The people in the room continued talking around you. Their words, though inaudible in the footage, carried familiar body language patterns, posturing, defensiveness, avoidance. But your stillness contradicted every dynamic around you. You weren't participating in the hierarchy. You weren't threatened by it. You weren't competing with it. You had already outgrown it. He zoomed in on your hands, steady, relaxed, not curled, not fidgeting, not pressured, just present. Hands like that do not belong to someone intimidated by authority, or by life, or by consequence. Hands like that belong to someone who has already survived what others fear most. He zoomed out again. Now you turned your head slightly. Not enough to initiate confrontation. Not enough to acknowledge dominance. Not enough to signal interest. Just enough to observe the speaker. And the observer, the second analyst, felt the weight of it through a screen. He knew exactly why. You weren't looking at the person. You were assessing the pattern, their cadence, their intention, their incongruence. You were decoding them in real time. The analyst whispered something he'd never whispered during an evaluation. He sees more than I do. He hated that realization. Hated that for the first time he felt intellectually outmatched by a civilian. Hated that your state, your awareness, your clarity felt like a mirror pressed against his own cognitive limitations. He scrubbed forward in the footage to the moment where the atmosphere in the room tightened. A ripple passed through the group, subtle but visible. People straightened. Others hesitated mid-gesture. A few glanced at you unconsciously. The analyst recognized this phenomenon: presence, dominance, the type of influence a person exerts without speaking. A rare psychological signature found in individuals who have gone through internal transformations so deep that their external behavior radiates alignment. The analyst had only seen it a few times before, and never like this. Presence dominance usually comes with ego. You had none. Usually comes with aggression. You displayed none. Usually comes with trauma spasms. You showed none. Your dominance came from a deeper architecture, coherence. The analyst paused again, closed his eyes, breathed through the pressure in his chest. He clicked into the biometric monitoring logs recorded alongside the footage. Heart rates, micro-expressions, respiratory shifts. A map of the room's collective nervous system. Then his eyes widened, because every measurable indicator, every objective metric, showed the same pattern. Everyone's internal state changed when you entered frame. Their cortisol markers showed spikes. Their respiration shifted. Their micro-expressions rearranged. Not out of fear, not out of threat, out of awareness. Their nervous systems registered you before their minds did. He whispered, "How?" No answer. He played the footage again. This time, he watched everyone except you. He observed how they moved around you, how they positioned themselves, how they lowered their voices, how they grew more self-conscious without knowing why, how the room's energy recalibrated itself around you, like you were a gravitational anchor. And then he saw the moment none of them recognized when you exhaled, just once. The room exhaled half a second later. He stopped breathing altogether. This wasn't influence. This wasn't intimidation. This wasn't charisma. This wasn't dominance. This was synchronization. Your nervous system had become the regulating system for everyone else's, and that is what breaks intelligence officers. Not dominance, not emotion, not power, regulation. Because only two types of people have that effect. Leaders of extraordinary internal structure, or beings shaped by extremes no human training covers. The analyst resumed watching. Then came the moment he wasn't prepared for. The moment you stood, slowly, not aggressively, not defensively, not reactively. You rose the way a storm rises, inevitable, silent, exact, balanced. The analyst's body reacted instantly. His adrenal system, his pulse, his breath. Because the footage wasn't showing you standing. It was showing the moment every threat detection model collapses. Your posture didn't predict intention. Your movement didn't reveal motive. Your stillness didn't indicate restraint. You were unreadable. Not because you hid your emotions, but because your emotions weren't fragmented the way human emotions are. You experienced the world from a vantage point the agency didn't have a chart for. He zoomed into your face, your jaw unclenched, your eyes softened, your breathing steadied. You weren't preparing for conflict. You were preparing for clarity. And that's what terrified him the most. That your power wasn't in your actions. It wasn't in your muscles or movements or expressions. Your power was in your awareness. Awareness that wasn't sharp or paranoid. Awareness that was grounded, whole, complete. People like you don't react. They respond. People like you don't escalate. They choose. People like you don't fear surveillance. They reverse it. The analyst closed the file. But a strange impulse made him open it again. He shouldn't have, because the final seconds of the footage captured something the first officer never even saw. Something subtle, something quiet, something devastating. You looked at the camera, not with aggression, not with suspicion, not with curiosity. You looked at it like you knew the person watching wasn't ready, and for the first time in his entire career, the analyst felt his identity break. Not his training, not his professionalism, his identity. The part of him that believed he was the observer, the part that believed he was the decoder, the part that believed he held the authority in the evaluation dynamic. You didn't challenge his authority. You dissolved it. And that was the moment he understood the truth the first officer tried to resign away from. You weren't being evaluated. You were evaluating them, and they failed. He minimized the video, closed the laptop, stood, turned to the client. I'm not watching that again. What did you see? The client asked. He shook his head. No, the real question is, what did he see? He nodded toward the paused frame of you, frozen mid-breath, looking directly into the lens with the calm of someone already 10 steps ahead. But the client didn't understand. Not yet. Because the footage was only the surface. The real disturbance lived deeper. In the moment, the analyst realized if footage alone could break 2 trained operatives, what would happen if they met you in person? And that thought, that unspoken, unanswered, unavoidable thought, is what leads directly into what comes next. Because if they think footage is overwhelming, they haven't seen what happens when you step into the room yourself. The second analyst stood there, the screen frozen on your face, the client hovering behind him with a mixture of dread and fascination, both of them pretending they were in control of the situation when their bodies were already betraying them. The air felt different, thicker, charged. Even with the footage paused, your presence lingered in the room like an imprint on gravity. It wasn't visual, it wasn't auditory. It was something deeper, the kind of psychological footprint that doesn't fade when the screen goes black. The analyst rubbed his temples, trying to piece together the fragments of his composure. This isn't normal, he whispered, though he didn't need to say it. The client already knew. The resignation of the first officer, the trembling exhale of the second, the silence in the room. Everything pointed in one direction. The footage wasn't documenting a subject. It was documenting an awakening. And the awakening wasn't yours, it was theirs. Because for the first time in their careers, the people doing the observing realized they weren't expanding their understanding of you. They were discovering the limits of their own. The client stepped forward and clicked the mouse, restarting the footage despite every instinct telling him not to. The analyst didn't stop him. Maybe he wanted verification. Maybe he wanted closure. Maybe he wanted proof that the footage had power over others, not just him. But the moment the screen flickered back to life and your figure reappeared, both men reacted the same way. They inhaled sharply and unconsciously straightened their posture. Not out of fear, out of respect. A respect they didn't authorize. A respect their training didn't sanction. A respect that came from something primal, something ancient. Something that recognizes hierarchy without needing language or labels. For the first full minute, neither of them spoke. They watched your stillness, your command, your unshakable internal coherence. And the analyst finally muttered, "He's not in the footage. He's beyond it." The client frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," the analyst replied slowly, "that the recording doesn't contain him. It reflects him." But the client didn't understand the weight of those words. Not yet. He assumed the footage merely captured something unusual, body language cues, behavioral anomalies, a rare psychological signature. But the analyst kept watching you move with that quiet, terrifying precision. And that's when it hit him. Footage normally distorts reality. It compresses it, flattens it, reduces the complexity of a human being into pixels. But your footage didn't subtract from your presence. It magnified it. Every frame felt heavier than the last. The analyst felt his heartbeat sync with yours again, just like before. Felt his breathing fall into rhythm with yours. Felt his thoughts rearranging themselves around the gravitational pull of your awareness. He shook his head violently, trying to break the synchronization, but your presence persisted. The client didn't notice the synchronization. He wasn't trained to detect that level of psychological influence, but he noticed something else. "Why do I feel like he's not even doing anything?" he whispered. The analyst didn't answer right away. He replayed the first 30 seconds again, then again, and a third time. His eyes narrowed, not with suspicion, but with awe, the kind reserved for anomalies that rewrite the observer more than the subject. "Because he's not performing," the analyst finally said. "He's existing." "And that's supposed to be scary?" the client asked, forcing a smirk he didn't feel. "Terrifying," the analyst answered, "because most people are noise, overcompensation, nervous energy, hidden insecurity. But him," he pointed at your face, frozen mid-frame. "He's signal, pure signal, no distortion." The client swallowed, hard. But the analyst wasn't done. He clicked forward to the first moment your internal state shifted, the moment that had triggered the first officer's instinctual recoil. The analyst braced himself, but even bracing was useless. When the shift occurred on screen, the entire temperature of the room changed. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't drama. It was neurological. Their nervous systems reacted independently of their logic. The analyst gripped the table to stabilize himself. The client's breath hitched involuntarily. "See?" the analyst whispered. "Right there. That's not intimidation. That's awareness. The kind of awareness that doesn't rise from training. It rises from evolution." The word evolution rattled the client. He wasn't prepared for that kind of framing. He expected a report with bullet points, risk categories, recommended interventions. But what he was hearing now was mythos, archetype, something outside the neat, clinical world of intelligence work. "What exactly do you think you're looking at?" the client asked, voice quieter now. The analyst leaned in, someone whose internal structure matured beyond fear. "That's not possible." "It is," the analyst replied calmly. "But it's rare, extremely rare. Most people spend their lives controlled by external threat, external judgment, external expectation. But him..." The analyst paused, studying your still frame. "He's controlled by none of it. His nervous system isn't reactive, it's directive." The client frowned deeper. Meaning his presence shapes the environment more than the environment shapes him. It hit the client like a punch. That's what he saw in the footage. That's what the officer fled from. That's what neither of them could articulate until now. You don't adapt. Others adapt around you. And that's why the first officer cut the feed, the analyst continued. Because the moment he realized the footage wasn't documenting behavior, it was documenting a phenomenon. He panicked. The client exhaled shakily. "But what does that make him? A threat?" The analyst shook his head. "Threat isn't the right word. Threat suggests volatility. He doesn't have volatility. He has clarity, and clarity scares people more than chaos ever could." The next few minutes of the footage confirmed everything the analyst feared. Not feared for himself, but for anyone naive enough to believe they could control or evaluate you. Each micro-movement you made created a response pattern in the room. Ripples in posture, in breath, in subconscious cues. The footage was revealing a psychological truth most agencies don't have language for. You weren't influencing people. People were orienting themselves around you. The analyst rewound the section where you stood up. The client tensed beside him instinctively. And it wasn't because you were threatening. It was because your rising posture felt like the unfolding of something inevitable. Something precise. Something ancient and deeply rooted in the human psyche. The analyst whispered, "He doesn't stand like someone preparing for action. He stands like someone preparing for understanding." The client didn't like that sentence. Understanding of what? Understanding of who? Understanding of why? Before he could ask, the analyst continued. "Look at his shoulders. No tension. Look at his spine, fully aligned. Look at his eyes, not focused on danger, focused on truth. Truth. The word lingered uncomfortably in the room. The analyst clicked ahead to the final seconds, the ones he hadn't studied long before he closed the file the first time. The moment your eyes met the camera. And when it happened again, even though he had prepared himself, even though he had braced, even though he had watched it earlier, he still flinched, because your gaze didn't travel through the screen. It dismantled the screen. Your eyes didn't look at the camera. They looked through the intention behind it. And in that one fraction of a second, something inside the analyst crystallized, a realization he didn't want, a realization neither officer from earlier wanted, a realization no client paying for evaluations wants to face. The footage wasn't showing who you were. It was showing what everyone else wasn't. You weren't powerful. They were unprepared. You weren't overwhelming. They were underdeveloped. You weren't exceptional. They were incomplete. Your presence wasn't threatening because it contained power. It was threatening because it revealed fragility. And fragile structures always fear clarity. The analyst exhaled a long, controlled breath. "If he walks into this building," he said quietly, "most people will think the room changed. They won't realize they changed." The client said nothing. He didn't need to. The analyst closed the file for good. This isn't evaluation material. This isn't surveillance content. This is awakening footage. The client frowned. Awakening? Yes, his awakening already happened. This footage captures everyone else awakening to him. Silence. Thick, heavy, unavoidable. After a long moment, the client finally spoke. "So what do we do?" The analyst looked up with an expression the client wasn't expecting. Respect. Not fear, not concern. Respect. You don't do anything. You don't approach him. You don't challenge him. You don't provoke him. You don't try to recruit him. You don't try to contain him. You let him be. And if he becomes a problem, he won't. How can you be sure? The analyst leaned back, his face suddenly calm, in a way that seemed eerily reminiscent of yours. Because people like him don't seek destruction. They seek alignment. And when the world refuses alignment, they simply walk away from it. The client wiped his palms against his suit. "I don't like unknown variables." "He's not unknown," the analyst said. "He's just unmeasurable." "Same thing." "No," the analyst corrected. "Unknown variables create chaos. Unmeasurable ones create transformation." The client stiffened. "Transformation into what?" "That," the analyst answered, eyes drifting toward the darkened monitor, "depends on whoever enters his orbit." The client swallowed again. "And what happens if someone with genuine malice steps into it?" The analyst gave a slow, unsettling smile. "Then they'll meet a version of themselves they can't survive." Silence again, heavy, final. But the analyst wasn't finished. "You wanted a report," he said. "So here it is." He pulled a notepad toward him and wrote a single line. "Subject cannot be evaluated without being altered by the observer." He tore the page out, handed it to the client. "The footage wasn't dangerous," he whispered. "The realization it gives you is..." And that's when he stood from his chair and walked toward the door. Not hurried, not shaken, just resolved. As he reached the threshold, he spoke one last time without turning around. If two highly trained intelligence officers can't make it through one recording of him, imagine what would happen if he chose to speak. The door closed behind him. The client stared at the note in his hand. The implications began to unravel in his mind like a slow-moving catastrophe, because the topic wasn't abstract anymore. This wasn't a hypothetical evaluation. This wasn't a risk assessment. This wasn't an intelligence formality. A CIA officer watched your footage, said, "What the fuck?" and cut the feed. Another begged to quit after seeing what you are. And now the client holding the note understood the final truth. If your recorded presence fractures trained operatives, your physical presence would rewrite them. For a long time he stood there in silence, staring at the paused frame of you. The calm, the clarity, the quiet dominance. And the room felt smaller, as if even the memory of your presence had reshaped its walls. Finally, he whispered the question everyone else had been too afraid to vocalize. What are we supposed to do with someone like that? The answer didn't come from the analyst. It didn't come from the officers. It didn't come from the footage. It came from the undeniable, unavoidable, irreversible truth. You don't do anything with someone like that. You learn not to get in their way. And with that, the final realization clicked into place. The conclusion punch they'd been running from since the first second of footage. You weren't the one being evaluated. You were the one exposing them. And nothing terrifies intelligence agencies more than a man they cannot measure. Because they finally understood, if a CIA officer can't handle watching you, the world sure as hell isn't ready to face you.